If you're trying to decide whether to buy your first home or become a rent investor in 2025, this decision could literally be worth hundreds and thousands of dollars over the next 20 years. I'm going to break down today in real numbers, the hidden cost, the brutal truth about both strategies that no one wants to talk about. And by the end of this video, you'll have the complete picture to make the right decision for your situation. Good day, I'm Moxin Reza, and today we are settling in the biggest property debate in Australia. Should you buy your own home or should you rent invest? Now, before we dive in, I want to be crystal clear. I'm not here to push you towards either options. Both strategies can work brilliantly and both can be disasters if done wrong. What I'm giving you today is an unbiased analysis of the real costs, the benefits, and the considerations for 2025. We look at 5 key areas: the upfront cost, ongoing expenses, lifestyle factors, well-being potential, and the risks you need to know about. Let's start with what is actually the cost to get into either strategy in 2025. Because if you are buying your first home in 2025, the government is actually throwing some serious incentives your way. In New South Wales, for example, you can get full stamp duty exemptions for homes to $800,000 and concessional rates for homes between $800,000 to $1 million. In Queensland, the first home concessions applies to homes under $800,000 and you can save up to $24,525. But here is what those incentives don't cover. On a $700,000 property with 10% deposit, you're looking at $70,000 upfront cost, plus building and pest inspections, $800 to $1,200, conveyancing, $1,500 to $2,500, and mortgage refinancing fees. Even with stamp duty savings, you're still looking at $75,000 to $80,000 to get the keys. Compare this scenario to rent vesting. You need a rental bond, typically 4 weeks rent, moving costs, and then your investment property deposit. But here's the kicker. You can often get into investment properties with way smaller deposits if you're really savvy about it. And you're not restricted to specific price points or locations. The real difference? When you rent west, you forfeit your first home buyer's benefit. So you need to be confident this strategy will outperform those government incentives over time. The cash flow reality check. Let's say you're looking at $700,000 property with current rates at around 6 to 7% for owner-occupiers. Your repayments are roughly $1,100 to $1,200 per week. Meanwhile, renting a similar property might cost you $800 to $900 per week. That's $200 to $300 weekly difference that adds up to $10,000 to $15,000 per year. Over a 10-year period, that's potentially $104,000 to $156,000 in additional cash flow that you can invest elsewhere. However, and this is crucial, when you buy, part of your repayment goes towards building equity. On that $700,000 loan, roughly $300 to $400 per week goes towards principal in early years. So the real dead money comparison is your rent versus the interest portion of the mortgage, not the total repayment. The lifestyle and the flexibility factor. This is where the rubber meets the road for most Australians. And it's not about money. The flexibility advantage. Rent vesting gives you incredible flexibility that homeowners simply cannot match. Your job relocates to Brisbane, pack up and go. Life is unpredictable. The reality is that renting is only as good as your landlord. A reasonable landlord makes renting a breeze, but a difficult one makes your life miserable. That's a real risk you need to factor in. However, rent vesting does not let you live in areas you can't afford to buy in. That $700,000 budget might get you a small unit in an outer suburb, but it could rent you a house in a prestigious area for $800 to $900 per week. The question becomes, is living in your preferred location worth the trade-off in the long-term security? Not really for me. Government incentives versus investment benefits. Now, this is where the numbers gets really interesting and where most people make their biggest mistakes. First home buyers incentives in 2025, the government is essentially paying you to buy your own home. In Victoria, you can get duty exemptions for properties up to $600,000 or concessions for properties value up to $750,000. In some states, this can save you $20,000 to $30,000 in upfront cost. Investment property tax benefit. But rent investors get different advantages. Your investment property expenses are tax deductible. The mortgage interest, the property management fees, maintenance, depreciation, and even the cost of travel to inspect the property. If you are in the tax bracket of 32.5% on your investment property cost you $15,000 per year to hold, you're getting back roughly about $4,800. Over 10 years, that's nearly $50,000 in tax benefit. The borrowing capacity gain. Here is something most people miss. Owner-occupier properties don't generate income, which may reduce your borrowing power. When you buy your own home, banks see it as an expense and not an investment. When you buy an investment property, they factor in the rental income. This means you might be able to borrow more for rent vesting than for owner-occupier, potentially allowing you to invest in higher value property or multiple properties. Here is the catch. With investment properties in 2025 market, most investment properties are negatively yield, meaning they cost you money to hold each year. You'll be paying $15,000 to $25,000 annually to subsidize your rental property while also paying rent where you live. Wealth building potential and property performance. Now let's talk about what everyone really wants to know. Which strategy makes more money over time? The owner-occupier wealth path, where you buy your own home, you're building your equity through mortgage repayments while hopefully benefiting from capital growth one day. On a $700,000 property growing at 4% annually, you would roughly have around $1 million in property value after 10 years. Plus, you would have paid down perhaps $200,000 of mortgage. Your total possession, $1 million of property value minus the $430,000 remaining in mortgage, $610,000 in equity plus no capital gains tax when you sell, and you've had the security of home ownership, a very expensive roof over your head. The rent vesting, you're potentially building a property portfolio while maintaining the lifestyle of flexibility. Let's say that you invest the same $70,000 deposit into $600,000 investment into a growth area. After 10 years at 4% growth, that property is worth $740,000. You have paid down perhaps $150,000 of your mortgage, giving you $390,000 in equity from a single property. But here is where it gets interesting. Because you maintained your borrowing capacity, you might have bought a second property along the way. The mathematics can work heavily in your favor for rent vesting if you are disciplined about rent vesting and building a property portfolio. But here is what everyone gets it wrong. They assume optimistic property growth rates. If your investment property is only growing at 2 to 3% while you're paying 6 to 7% interest plus maintenance costs plus rent where you live, the numbers might not stack up as well as you have hoped. Now, the leverage advantage. However, investment properties do offer superior leverage opportunities. Rent vesting can support you in setting up a property portfolio that can benefit you financially in the long run. While an owner-occupier might struggle to buy a second property due to reduced borrowing capacity, a rent investor can potentially build a property portfolio of 3 to 4 properties very quickly over 10 to 15 years. The risk and the real considerations. Let's talk about what can go wrong with both strategies, because this is where people lose serious money. The biggest risk is overborrowing. Many people stretch themselves financially to get into the markets, leaving themselves house rich but cash poor. I'm talking about a lot of the Sydney siders today. The rent vesting risk carries different but equally serious risks. You're exposed to both rental market volatility where you live and the property market volatility where you invest. Rental increases can destroy your cash flow, while vacancy periods or problematic tenants can devastate your investment returns. There is also the risk of poor property selection. Rent vesting lets you step into the property market by purchasing in a more affordable region, but cheaper does not always mean better long-term growth. Both strategies are heavily influenced by government policies. Negative gearing benefits could be wound back, capital gains tax concessions could change, or first home buyers incentives could be modified. Your strategy needs to work even if the tax benefits disappear. Let's talk about the market timing considerations. In 2025's market, rent may cost less than mortgage repayments in many areas, making rent vesting more attractive from a cash flow perspective. But this differential can change quickly with the interest rate movements or rental market shifts. There is also a fundamental question about investment logic. If houses generally appreciate faster than units, why would you avoid buying a house you can afford to live in, but be willing to buy a unit in an area you wouldn't want to live in just for the rental income? This highlights a crucial risk. Sometimes the reason you don't want to live somewhere are the same reasons others avoid it too. The truth is, both strategies can work and both can fail spectacularly. So where does this leave you? Both rent vesting and buying your own home can be wealth building strategies, but they suit different people at different life stages with different priorities. The government incentives in 2025 makes this particularly attractive for first home buyers. Rent vesting makes sense if you prioritize flexibility, want to build a property portfolio, and have a discipline to rent vest consistently, and can handle the complexity of managing both the rent and the investment properties. Now, if this analysis has helped you think through the decision, smash the like button, subscribe for more unbiased property content, and drop in a comment below. Are you leaning towards buying or rent vesting? And what's driving your decision making?